Pork stock basically doesn't exist in European cuisine. There's several reasons for that, and I'll go into it more in Volume 3 of my cookbook series. For the parts of the world where pork stock does exist, it's usually seasoned strongly, unlike classic European stocks. This is a fusion of the two. It's almost a pork demi-glace, a concentrated broth. This is what I used to make the Matarini Bordelaise sauce recipe, and many people asked me about it, so I made this video. But this is also a great flavor enhancer for everything from tomato soup and gumbo to glazed vegetables with butter.
This is the pork that I'm using. It has bones running through it because this is sawed across the grain of the ribs. This could be used to make pork ribs, in fact, but it's got a lot more meat and fat and everything else on it than you would normally have with ribs. Okay, so putting these in, I'm going to add, it doesn't have to be exact, I'm adding about 2 or 3 tablespoons of vinegar to this. And then I'm filling this up with water that's warm. It's not hot, but it's above room temperature. And make sure that you've got enough liquid in there to completely submerge the pork. And I'm going to put a lid on it and just let it stand like this for a little while. We'll come back to it. Half the spices laid out here: 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 teaspoons of whole black peppercorns, about 1½ teaspoons of dried oregano, a teaspoon of sage, teaspoon of fenugreek, about ½ a teaspoon each of coriander seeds, cumin seeds, mustard, and whole cloves, and finally a teaspoon of paprika, good quality paprika. Those all go in the spice grinder, of course. Now, when the time elapsed, I took these out and I emptied the water out of here. I ran cold water over the ribs, over the meat, really. It's more meat than it is rib, and dried them off loosely. I didn't dry them too carefully because it's not really important here. And I'm adding, this is, by the way, 2 kilograms of pork. I'm adding a couple of tablespoons of that spice mixture, about 1 tablespoon per kilogram. And we're going to rub this on a little bit. And we'll start the roasting process in just a minute here. The oven's almost preheated. Okay. It's important to do this in a separate pan because you don't want to get the spices into your roasting pan so that they burn. You want all the spices on the pork. Okay, now, in this case I'm using a heavy copper roasting pan. You don't have to do that. But don't use a thin one for this. This needs to be a heavy roasting pan. A lot of times I advocate using really thin metal because I really want to burn the bottom of that. This is not one of those times. I want to use a nice thick roasting pan. Now, while the pork is roasting, we're going to take care of making the tomato base sauce. I've got 150 grams of passata here. About 75 milliliters of dry red wine. Actually, I'm using Tempranillo here. I've got the spice mix from before. The garlic. This has been crushed with an actual garlic press, and it's been left to stand for several minutes at room temperature, open to the air, as I explained in Volume 2 of my cookbook. And about 1½ teaspoons of white sugar. Now the pan's getting hot. This pan is smoking hot. I'm adding 2 or 3 tablespoons of oil to this. It's really hot pan, as you can see by the amount of smoke coming off of this. I have a splatter guard ready, and I have the passata. Passata is going to go in, splatter guard is going to go over, all in one step. After just a few seconds here, you can take the splatter guard off again, add the rest of the passata, and that's hot, and the sugar. Put the splatter guard back. Now I can turn the heat down to 7. Okay, it's been about 1½ minutes. And you can see it's definitely starting to brown on the bottom here. You can see it through the tomato paste. So now I'm going to actually stir it. You can see that brown on the bottom there. Okay. Now the garlic is going to go in. just about 5 or 10 seconds here. Just enough to cook the garlic. Now the red wine. Add the rest of that spice mix in. And this is enough for the heat. The rest of it will be cooked by residual heat in the pan. This is what you want to end up with, this little cup of the flavor base. Here we have the meat after an hour and a half at 220 Celsius. You see there's a lot of fat that's ran off of here. We're going to collect this and strain it and use it for something else. It'll be just pork fat that'll be used for cooking other vegetables and things. This meat is going to get transferred to the pressure cooker. Other ingredients to the pressure cooker include the onion, a carrot, stalk of celery, and that tomato concentrated base sauce that we made earlier. I've got the coarsely chopped vegetables here on the bottom. I'm putting the meat and the bones on top of this. Let's see. And then this tomato concentrate goes on top of that. Now we're going to fill it up with water. Okay, I've got water up to the fill line on the pressure cooker. Now I'm going to put the lid on it and we'll begin the timing. Pulled the meat out of it and cast the rest of it through a strainer. Now, this can either be refrigerated and let the fat form a skin on top, or if you prefer, you can use a fat separating pitcher first. I'm going to let this separate naturally in the refrigerator. It's cleaner than the fat separating pitcher. You get better results. And the next morning, this is what you have. There's this layer of pork fat over the top that you can skim off. Now, here's the fat that I separated off. You can use this to cook vegetables or other things. I've poured the rest of this out into a saucepan. I'm going to reduce this slowly.
Keep an eye on it. Watch that it doesn't get over-reduced. You want to bring this down to where it weighs about 200 grams, so you can weigh it occasionally and check it.
Then, after it cools in the refrigerator, you have something quite gelatinous like this. It's just filled with flavor.
The second volume of my cookbook is now available through Amazon and other booksellers. It covers the YouTube recipes from the last 8 months with more in-depth information. I received requests for the procedures on all recipes, and I've listened to you. Every recipe has step-by-step directions, and of course there are recipes that aren't on YouTube. But this is not just a recipe book. Far from it, as you can see from some of the topics scrolling by here. I'm certain that anyone who watches my channel and any serious cook will find this book a treasury of useful and new information you won't find anywhere else. If you want to know more about my adventures as a chef around the world and have some great laughs along the way, be sure to check out the video tour of my book, 40 Years in One Night. It's up on YouTube right now. Click the link. Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.